With all the ways that we hear technology is ruining us, is there a good use of the tech that surrounds us? Well, in this episode, we're going to talk to Dr. Felicia Song. She's a sociologist, and she works with the interface of how people exist in the world with technology and how that shapes them, both as individuals and groups. In this discussion, we're going to talk about some of the standard problems with discussions about AI, some of the places they go wrong, but also creating a positive imagination about human interactions that don't require tech, while also being responsible in the ways that we might use tech, not just with AI right now, but future versions of tech that we can't even conceive of yet. If you like what you've been listening to on this podcast, you can give us a rating at the typical places you find your podcast. You can also subscribe and like here on the YouTube channel. And if you want to give to the efforts, if you like this enough to actually pull money out of your pocket and give to us, we would appreciate that at thebiblicalmind.org/give. Now on to our program.
This is the Biblical Mind Podcast, produced by the Center for Hebraic Thought. Honest 5-star reviews help others find this podcast. Visit the magazine at thebiblicalmind.org for articles and videos that explore the deep structures of Scripture.
I think it's definitely an interesting observation that you make, that I'm writing into an area that is getting saturated. It certainly wasn't the case 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It was a category of thinking and writing that felt a bit, I don't know. People either wanted to talk about digital technology only, or they wanted to talk about being human only. And it just wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't where it is now. And so, I think it's great. It's exciting that so many different people have gotten to a place where they recognize the need to talk about this very important area that clearly most of society has, and the world has had some kind of formative experience in which they feel the shaping pressures of our digital world. Now, as to the less helpful ways, I tend to think that addressing the hype is often, I think it's necessary to name when there is industry hype and when there is a kind of outsized fervor about new technologies and what they're capable of doing. But I think getting too bent out of shape about it too early can be can add to the anxiety that some people already feel. And if folks were watching what was happening in the world in the early 2000s, it's like we kind of did this earlier with the rise of the digital economy and the dot-com boost. So like it's understandable, but it's also something that we've done before. So we should kind of keep kind of a sane level of like, things are going to play out. It's not necessarily going to work out the way that the industry says it is, or the fearmongers are saying it's going to be. Let's keep a level head. And it's not quite the time to throw everything out the window, and it's not quite the time to embrace everything either, right? There has to be a more, I think what's helpful to people is a more considered and a historical, even as I'm already kind of moving the way I'm moving. I think a historical perspective is really helpful when we're encountering new things. And so to speak ahistorically, I think, is to do all of ourselves a disservice for what we've lived through already.
Mm. What some
Yeah.
of us have lived through. I mean,
Yes. Some of us have lived through.
that's a refreshing insight that I don't think many people. I've never heard anybody make that insight before. Um, but it brought to mind. I mean, I remember when I was in the military, and a friend of mine who was in college was telling me about the internet and
Huh.
trying to explain it to me, and
Yeah.
it took a while, right?
Yeah,
Because I was
yeah.
just like, well, why wouldn't you just go grab a book? Why would you go on a computer and look that up? Um, and then I remember it took me a long time to figure out, how are they funding all of this? And how would you ever make money off a thing like this? This just seems like such a weird, like the economic model didn't make any sense. And so, I grew up or I guess I was aging in the 80s and 90s,
Mhm.
where I've watched this cycle. So that feels very like, oh yeah, we have been through this before. We've been through iterations of this before. I think it's not entirely true, because I know there was a theology tied to the World Wide Web and the
Huh.
democratization of
Mm,
knowledge that was hoped
mhm.
for that naively evaporated. Um, but I think also one thing that you see or you hear reports of is that hype is not just perversely incentivized like market engineering.
Mhm.
There also is a version of that hype that actually is teleological. It's imagining like a
Mm,
new age
mm,
with a
mhm.
new type of humanity. So I
Yeah.
wonder if that differentiates this, or maybe that's just, again, different iteration of the same thing.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think there's definitely a segment of uh, the population and of those who are thinking in this area who are very invested in um, the possibilities of humans evolving
Mhm,
in particular ways, and that's both folks that are within the industry and folks outside of it looking in, and so I have to confess, it's an area that just, um, it hasn't interested me very
fair
much,
enough.
mainly because I think in the end of the day, um, I'm mainly animated by questions of how we navigate what we have.
Mhm,
Right? With the given life that and the given time that we have to live, how do we live well? And um especially how do we live in relation to others and in relation to ourselves? And technology just happens to be the variable for me.
mm,
The one that I see as being um, important for us to address, deeply formative in this particular time, something that for, like I said, 10, 15 years ago, nobody seemed to really want to talk about. But that seemed like a mistake to me.
mhm,
It just seemed like, oh, we're missing something, and we've adopted a lot of practices that we aren't really thinking a whole lot about. We don't know how to talk about it with each other, either. In these kinds of dyadic conversations or more collective organizational
mm,
spaces, right? And that it seemed like that was a problem. Like we should really be more intentional in becoming aware and knowing how to talk about it
mm,
in ways that are not simply, do we do this or not? On or off.
right.
Is this good or bad? But rather, or is this sinful or not sinful, right? But something much more um, with an imagination that is much more capable of reaching into our phenomenological experience of interacting with devices and interacting with each other through devices, right? Like what's actually happening to us
Mhm.
and what is happening to my 24-hour cycle that I get to live each day when I think I'm doing the same tasks that I was before, but now it's mediated. I'm working, I'm engaging with family and friends, I'm shopping, right? These are things that people have done for a long time, but somehow I'm doing it in a way that's different. And how is that difference? Does that difference matter, right?
Mm.
Like, is that doing something else to me when I'm shopping online or talking with my family members online, etc.?
Yeah, the doing something to me, I've written quite a bit on ritual and ritual thought in
Mm,
scripture and
mm,
beyond, and for today maybe even. And Sherry Turkle has this famous quote: "Our tools shape us."
mhm.
And I always wonder what exactly people mean by the us. Are we
Mm.
talking like cyborgically being our neurology being rewired? Are we talking about, for lack
Yeah.
of a better word, our soul being retrained in some way? Or what do you, when you say it affects us, like
Mm.
what do you think those effects tangibly might be?
Yeah. I tend to I'm super fascinated by the neurological, the biological effects. That is always kind of stunning and bracing all at the same
Mm,
time
right, right.
to consider. I think I tend to be drawn to um, a much more, like I mentioned before, a much more phenomenological experience, right? And so sociologists like Rosa, who's come out with resonance and
Mhm.
uncontrollability of the world, right? He has this perspective that is getting at a very felt experience,
Mm,
right? Like what is the sheer felt difference that I feel in my body, in even in like the way I'm cognitively processing the fact that you and I aren't in the same room, that I'm
mhm,
talking to you, and you're a very small box right now, right, in my line of vision. And even though I'm so thankful that I get to talk to you, it is clearly going to be like I'm experiencing it very differently from what it would be like if we were in the same room together. And so what does that mean? Does it matter? Like what matters, what doesn't
mhm,
matter, so to speak. Um and again, similarly, what does it mean that um I might have a line of work that requires me to engage a screen for most of my day and I don't go outside,
mhm,
and I don't actually walk and see other human beings that I don't intend to see, neighbors, people driving by. Like, what does that do to me as a human being in a deep level? And that's a question that is just one drop in a much larger span of, we could talk about that in the context of modernity, right?
right.
Right, and really expand the historical, like timeline that we're looking at. Um, but I think when I say us, I am interested in a felt experience. And maybe what I'll do is I'll put a little footnote here and say that one of the things I'm increasingly aware of and not sure exactly what I should do about is the fact that I think what for a long time I felt was a universal felt experience, humans feel this, is something that is getting problematized. And certainly in my field of sociology, there's a lot of literature and theorizing on how our felt experiences are deeply shaped by our social class, by our gender, by right, all these things. And so this us is can be actually quite varied, in felt experience, right? And I'm not even talking about, oh, the young people these days that have never had a chance to read a book, that kind of thing, right? But I'm talking about just, someone like recognizing that I occupy a very particular social location with a particular experience that is my felt experience, but that someone living in a very different socioeconomic situation might have something just feel actually in their body, something
Mm.
really different. And then we could talk about neurodivergence and all that, right? That's another
Right.
category. So all that to say, it's a us is deeply problematic, and I'm learning to try to figure out how to speak, um, with an awareness of my limitations and trying to be read more widely and also um, think about, well, how can I write in a way that speaks into other people's experiences, other people that experience something very, very different from what I
Mm.
live.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I feel like as a biblical studies person, I spend 90% of my time in a classroom trying to get students or parishioners in some cases to
Mm.
imagine what it would be like to
Mhm.
never have a concept of a government who could come in and save you if something went wrong, or food
Yeah.
aid does not exist, right? Or you're
Yes.
looking at your crops thinking, "Don't collapse," right? Because this is it.
Yes.
Um, and so there is this kind of like what it's like to be in philosophy terms. I think about what it's like to be a bat. There is a kind of
Yes.
what it's like to be an agrarian subsistence farmer to every biblical storyline. Um, and there's also what I have noticed, I teach a lot of freshman classes, so 13th grade with a lot of 18-year-olds. They not only have a hard time wanting to like get away from some of the tech in their life or reduce it or remove it, they actually can't even imagine a world in which that could happen. Like they say, well, yeah, you grew up without these things. That's fine. But now we could, and I'm not suggesting again, an on off, we don't do these things.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that imagination of what it would be like to not ever check your phone during the day, like
Mhm.
no desire, no imagination that could be a thing. So in
Yeah.
that kind of us that is trying to understand what it feels like, how do we, when you talk about uses of text, this is kind of a generational divide. I remember a time when I'd
Mm.
never, until 2013, when I finally got a cell phone, I never
Yeah.
worried about having a cell phone on me. And
Right.
so it's very easy for me to recall that. How is that even a worthy project with people who have like grown up in the screen era?
um, yes, I think it is. Um, if only because to not even try and to not suggest it is to concede that um, their lives will actually be less
Hmm.
because they've had ceaseless connectivity.
Hmm.
Um, and I think this is where, when we talk about trying to imagine what other people experience, um, movies are a great place for that I think still have traction,
Hmm.
that invite you to enter into someone's experience that might be very different from yours and gives you just a different POV, as the young people say, right? And so um, I think a lot of when I've interacted with younger people, it's trying to One, um, get them to slow down enough
Mm.
to think about what are the times in their lives that have really mattered, like really mattered. And then we talk about what were the contexts or the coordinates for that. And for most people, that's usually not with a screen,
Mm.
right? And so then we examine things from there, right? To be like, okay, those are your core memories, or that was deeply formative for you. And if it was a positive experience, then we say, well, how do we have more of that?
Mm.
Without even necessarily having to get them to open the possibility that maybe they're actually not as happy and satisfied with their lives as they think they are, or are willing to defend their habits for. What I've
Mm.
found in the last, decade or so is really a strong shift in young people's willingness to say, no, this actually stinks.
Yeah.
But to your point, a resignation continues to exist. Like, well, what else am I going to do about this? This is the world I live in. I can't not. And there's a way in which I very much I empathize with that, like I don't want to make light of that feeling. Um and like structural reality for most
Mhm.
of them, right? Like this is the platform they're on is the way in which they conduct their social lives. Like there's a very true reality that is, if they got off of it, there would be real costs, right?
Mm.
And to make light of those costs is not helpful and unfair, I think, actually. And so, um, you know, it for different groups of young people, for some of them, they might be motivated by knowing that the tech industry very much wants us to be resigned, that they want us to believe that there's a technological imperative, that this is part of the the ideology, right? That continues the machine, that is the economic machine. But at the same time, I think it is maybe gently pressing up against the deterministic resignation and
Mm.
saying, um, that it's true that there's a lot of things that aren't going to go away anytime soon. But if we actually, sorry, this is the history in major me. I am always like, if we look historically, um, like technologies have continually been objects of societal shaping. I mean,
Mhm.
that's just a historical fact. It's always been that. It's always been different groups of people, different collectives who have had power or not power, that have shaped um, the ways that we use technology, and whether that is a cultural movement or that's a legislative act, there have been actually changes, right? And so, like, I often talk about the safety belt, right? Like Ralph Nader, like we all wear safety. I mean, it's a very compressed story, but
Right.
right, it's just like people didn't wear safety belts, and now you get in the car. It's like, look at you, young person, you just put it on,
Right.
right? And so it's not even necessarily that it's because it's the law. You
Mhm.
actually put it on because you feel like this is a good idea,
Right.
right? And so that's just one of those very small but like quick instances of saying, like, cultures do change. They've changed in my own lifetime, right? And so to think that we like that the cement isn't still wet in some
Mm.
ways, right? Is actually misguided.
Yeah, the safety belt, that's a great example. I think of littering as well.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
having lived in an immigrant community for about 13 years in Newark, New Jersey, you forget, like, oh, littering there was a campaign. We were taught in elementary school, don't litter, right there. And so but it's not universal. Like, it's not valued everywhere. And it
Right.
really is, it's something about yourself and your connection to the, the community, the world around you that you kind of carry
Mhm,
with you. And the way the
mhm.
seatbelt is, similarly, your connection to, hopefully not connection to the cars around you or
Yeah,
trees
right?
around you or whatever, but
Mhm.
it's something that's burned in. And so in ritual, sorry to drag this into my theory, but I'm trying to
No,
think
I
about what you're
wanna this
saying
is great.
through
I love
kind of
it.
ritual theorization is,
Yeah.
um, that ritualization, there's variations on it, but a lot of it is prescribed. So like people didn't just start wearing the seatbelt because they saw the car crash reports. I mean, we all
Mhm,
see highways are one of the most deadly places in the world. American highways are. Um, it took people going out there saying, you should do this. Don't, start forest fires.
mhm, mhm,
Don't litter, right? It doesn't
mhm,
keep America beautiful.
mhm,
So I guess the question is, at what level do you think we need to start? Those are all national campaigns. At
mhm,
what level do we, and I mean kind of Christians and concerned citizens,
mhm,
need to advocate? We'll talk about what we should advocate for, but
mhm.
what's the level you think that is actually comprehensible for us to advocate? Because we are telling people what to do with their bodies at the end of the day when we're telling them how to use tech or how not to use tech.
Yeah. I think of it in terms of, like, an all hands on deck. We're all, in different we have different spheres of influence, and, whether the influence is your child's school, classroom, or it is a congregation, or you're in a position to um, be involved in some kind of social movement or even some type of legislative, governing space. I think this is a really interesting cultural time where people are willing to listen,
Mm.
at least, and recognize, th- and recognize that there are discontents, right? That there are um, real problems in mental health, in people's general felt sense of exhaustion in the workplace, etc. That there's just data and anecdotal consensus, right?
Mhm.
That just did not exist before, and so I don't have a grand plan strategy in my mind of like how to get from point A to point B. Um, I think it is really about what we have at our disposal, and at what point we can find enough co-belligerents, so to speak, who because it's just it's deeply challenging to do anything on technology regarding technology on your own,
Mhm.
right? But to find other people to partner and collaborate and build some kind of critical mass that one can start advocating for some kind of change
Mm.
or sometimes it's about change in terms of setting restrictions, right? But then I think what would be super interesting, and this is where I think of the artists in our world and community, is those spaces that are not they're not saying that they are addressing the issue of technology, but they are merely quote unquote introducing something new
Hmm.
that into the community that is analog, low tech, that has some kind of compelling um I don't know, force to it. So I'm just thinking of here I live outside of Portland. Um there's this thing called the listening room where people go and they listen to an entire album by a particular artist. And
Wow.
that's what they do for the evening. There's no talking. It's just you go, you listen, and then you leave. And there's these wonderful testimonies of people's experiences of that. And it's really interesting, right? Because it's not coming out and saying like, you need to turn off your phones for the night, blah, blah, blah. It's to say, hey, let's have this
Mm.
different experience of like being together in a room, listening to Beyonce, or whoever, and just taking it in, right? And kind of reintroducing people to experiences of their five senses, of being together that they don't normally have. And
Mm.
that to me, that's always kind of whetting the appetite and being like, I want more of that. How do I get more of that? How do I build that into my life?
That's great. I'm trying to imagine someone going back to 1984 Drew and just saying, in the future, people are going to really value sitting, they're going to make an event out about sitting around and just listening to the whole album front and back.
Yeah, right?
I'd be like, oh, you mean like what we did every Tuesday,
All the
Thursday,
time.
yeah. And albums were created to listen to the whole thing back then as well. So, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. The positive thing that kind of, I was just thinking of places where we really don't even notice that we don't have our tech on us.
Mhm.
It's difficult to find them. I mean, even
Yeah.
I sometimes wince when I see concerts and everybody's just holding up their phone, videoing it, and I'm thinking, what a loss.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, I kind of get it what they've been trained to do. Um, I'm glad you brought up data because it does seem like we do now. You're a sociologist, a social scientist, so um, it seems like we can say a few things like, "Hey, we know these are worse for humans in general, and we know these are better things." So you just gave us a better thing. What would be, the top 2 or 3 things that you would just say, like, here's with the seatbelts thing, it's easy. You show them some videos of people getting killed in car crashes. You
Yeah.
show them the stats, and people go, "Oh yeah, okay." But I think it's just a much slipperier devil here that we're fighting when it comes to the bad use of technology.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I think, here in the United States in certain circles, Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt has
Mm.
hit a lot of people's bedside stand.
Mhm.
And so I think most of the data is coming from psychology. A lot of it is correlation,
Mhm.
looking at the effects of social media use on young people's mental health outcomes. I think there is also in the loneliness epidemic literature similar types of data about digital use and feelings of loneliness. And so, um, there's a way in which I think we're just on the front end of that data.
Mhm.
Like, data takes time,
Yeah.
and to actually get to causational sorts of claims is very, very difficult,
Right.
right? And so I think I think most of the to me, the compelling data is specifically it's compelling when it's specific about a particular platform. So, like, at least even saying social media instead of just
Right.
all digital, right?
Right.
Right. So to say like social media seems to be having this effect, this negative effect on psychological well-being. Then we can look at social media and say, okay, we can talk about the algorithms. We could talk
Mhm.
about, that particular structural space and what it is that might be driving those kinds of outcomes, right? And arguably do something about it.
Yeah.
Um, were you gonna say something? Sorry.
Oh, No,
Okay.
the little bit of delay causes me to accidentally cut people off all the time. But if you were here in person and we were like, bodies in a room together, I would also accidentally cut you off. So
No worries.
it's not,
Yeah.
not just the tech that's the problem.
Yeah. No, no, all good. All good. Um, the I think the other kind of zone of data that I would say the thing to keep an eye on is the data that's starting to come out about people's use of AI bots for
Mm,
companionship. I know AI is a vast topic. It's about a lot of different things. The part that I'm interested in is particularly the reliance on AI bots as a form of human substitution, kind of displacement for whatever reason, whether you're young or old, and the degree to which it is voluntary, as in, like, I'm just curious, I'm gonna go looking around, or I'm someone that is housebound and my social worker has recommended that I do
mm,
this, right? Because I don't have it, I don't have my spouse has passed away, I don't have family to come check in on me, right? And so they recommended this. So both the voluntary and the recommended, I think, are the effects of um, that type of um, AI bot companionship, and what the effects are, to me, are really interesting because it to keep an eye on, because I think it gets at one of the what I have felt is one of the most compelling reasons to use digital technologies, which has been that it's better than nothing,
hmm,
right? That maybe even we might call it, or if someone argue it's an inferior form, right, of companionship. It's better than having nothing at all, and that's an argument that I have both historically in myself found very compelling, but I'm also starting to read thinkers that are saying, actually, that's a fallback that's not actually helpful because of X, Y, and Z. And
yeah.
so I think, um, like I said in the very beginning, what I've always mainly been interested is in the way that technology impacts our relationships with each other and ourselves. And so it's the way that AI is presenting these options for both relationality and also options for um, perhaps navigating the difficulties we find in ourselves,
Hmm.
right? That are moving very fast. The industries are really pushing it. You see it a lot in the healthcare industry too, as options for people who have very limited resources. And so, yeah, that's the second one I would name.
Yeah, I'd forgotten. The companionship thing, I think I'm equally worried about. I'd forgotten about the therapeutic use, which is interesting because
Hmm.
it may be at the end of the day, after all the causational study work
Hmm.
comes in, they say, yeah, actually, for people like my mom when she was in the depths of her dementia, I could
Hmm.
imagine a simulated Drew who could
Hmm.
who could get
Yeah,
on the phone with her and kind of
yeah,
talk her through something as
yeah,
having some efficacy that might be not harmful. I think
yeah,
where I would see the harm is that it then strips away the actual human that might need to go and volunteer and spend time with them, right? It strips the opportunity
yeah.
away. So it's good for or equal for the individual, but bad for the community in some way. Is that what you're thinking? At least
Yeah,
one? Yeah. Okay.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. It is. So the question isn't merely about that, what's happening in that human computer interface, but it is what is happening as a society
Right.
when this becomes a relied upon lever to pull
Right.
in particular situations rather than pursuing other paths.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that requires people thinking about therapeutic outputs much more holistically and epidemiologically, I guess. All
Yes.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Before I let you go, we talked about technology companies and tech companies. I am in this
Mm.
weird position where I get asked to consult for Christian and specifically Bible technologies, including there's
Yeah.
a
Oh,
spate of
so
them that are using
interesting.
AI now, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm on my fourth test run with an app, a fourth app now that is using
Okay.
AI, and actually in a way that I find somewhat responsible, in a way that I have
Mm.
not found in some other apps.
Okay.
But the fact Christians are using AI. I mean, they've been
Mhm.
using everything technologically ever since it's come out.
Mhm.
Smoke machines, laser light shows, everything, right?
Yep.
Got to worship God somehow. The But, it seems AI has, like, stepped into this creepy zone, like this,
Hmm.
uncanny valley, right, that we're a
Mhm.
little worried about here. And so I wonder what you think, and my question is actually about church. It
Okay.
seems that the church, like, so my church, all our bulletins are on a QR code.
Uh-huh.
Nobody brings a Bible. Everybody's got their phone. Like, it
Okay.
seems to me that churches are complicit in this. I wonder if you think that that's probably fine and that's just another, it's like Gutenberg in the books, or if there's something else that might be concerning here.
Um, so my hot take is that I think churches would be better off without the technologies in their parishioners' hands, mainly because while it might be cost effective and efficient in so many ways, I understand like all the gains that can come of it. I think for many parishioners, um, church might be the only time they can put the device away.
Mm,
And this is kind of how, I was the teacher on the campus that asked students to put away their phones and their
me
laptops.
too.
And I always just was very like, "I'm sorry, I'm just weird, but this is my home, you're in my classroom, like, this is how we're just gonna run things." But I also really try to sell it as, this is the one place where you don't have to respond. And you can please just tell your friends and your parents and whoever else wants to reach you that you could just blame me.
Hmm.
Like your teacher has required this thing, and now you get 90 minutes of peace. Actually, you don't have to look. You don't have to worry about the notification,
Hmm.
right? And I just want you to spend those 90 minutes feeling what that feels like. And it wasn't necessarily a class on technology. It's
Mhm.
like it didn't
Yeah.
matter. And so I feel the same thing about church, that church is, at least in the context of Sunday worship spaces and times, it's a very fertile time and precious time, that churches can gather their people and offer a rest in the exact same way that Buddhist temples
Mm.
offer rests, meditations during lunch hours that people just walk in, whether they're Buddhist or not, right? Because they just want it to stop,
Hmm.
right? And so to me, it's like, why would we give that up?
Or increase
Like,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
right? Like, let's make it a time where you could just let it stop. Just let it stop. And just put your burdens down just for a moment, and let's just, it's okay. We can rest. And that would, to me, that's a much more, um, maybe what I want to say is that's a institutional structure that many churches already have, that you don't
Mhm.
have to do a lot to
No.
gin up, that is just it's just there. Right? Like, so why not use it,
Yeah.
and solve the other, program problems another way.
Hmm. it almost sounds like you're making the case for, and I'm on board with you if you are, because I also don't let anything, no technology. I wrote an article that summarizes all the reasons why they should read on paper, and so I just make them read that. But in church, it almost seems like you might be advocating for like Christian spiritual maturity involves the ability to be still as well in some ways. And I think we used to think of that in our sense, and cast your cares upon the Lord. And now I'm thinking, no, it actually means just physically being still. No vibrations in your, feel all the phantom text and move on until they fade or something like that. That might be a demand we place on people we're discipling to say, like, this is a Christian maturity skill you need to learn.
Yeah. Yes. I think I'm of the mindset that the beautiful thing about Christianity is that through time and across spaces, there have been different traditions and practices that have been so valuable, and that when we put ourselves in a particular time and space, particular practices might have particular resonance, or they feed our soul, because in 2020, as 2026 people, we just we kind of share certain burdens, scars, deficiencies, whatever, right? That are about our time, right? And so for me, I think of the contemplative tradition in their practices of stillness and silence as actually, the desert amas and abbas, right? It's like they actually have something that is very important now because of all the noise and all the ceaseless stimulus, right? And so let's learn now. So I say all that, all this prefacing is to say, like, maybe in another time there'll be some other practice, like we really need to get into scripture more carefully and be studying more, and right. And I think study of scripture is very important, right? Obviously, right? I'm talking to someone who sees, right? But I think in this time, right, saying that having more access to information actually doesn't necessarily feed the soul, right? The 2026 soul is the one that needs to discover what's possible through stillness and silence, and that will require, it will feel like a demand for most of us. It will feel very difficult. It will feel uncomfortable. But getting to the other side, I think, as those who teach in the contemplative tradition often say, right, is the fruit there is undeniable, right? It's just something that you can't get to anywhere any other way.
Well, Felicia Song, thank you so much for your wisdom and your guidance.
It's really been a pleasure. I really enjoyed this conversation.
You've been listening to the Biblical Mind podcast, exploring the deep structures of Christian scripture. For more, visit the magazine at thebiblicalmind.org. Subscribe to this podcast at all the usual places so you never miss an episode.